Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features Daredevil number 167, cover dated November 1980. So this cover is by Frank Miller, inked by Bob McLeod, and it is pretty interesting from a design perspective because we have this computer screen and we're looking at the point of view of, is it a robot? Is it, as it turns out to be, a body armor, something akin to Iron Man that has been worn by a human being? And the text on the computer screen readout is laser armed fire. Oh no, is Daredevil going to be shot by laser? And then we've got these questions down here. Question, who is the Mauler? Question, why is he killing Daredevil? And interesting here, collector's bonus, DD's Dark Secrets, and that will turn out to be an historic backup strip because it is written and drawn by Frank Miller, and the quality of the work was such that it prompted Denny O'Neil to make a fateful decision in a few issues' time. I'll talk more about that later on. So, one final point to make is that the technique being used here on the cover is that of color hold, which gives us these the blue and red coloration on the cover. So let's open this one up to the first page. And the creative team here is interesting because the regular writer is Roger McKenzie, but he's not writing this particular issue. So what happened? What happened is this. If you take a look at my video review of the previous issue 166, you'll see at the end of that issue that there was up next, like coming in the next issue, Punisher. There's no Punisher in this issue. And what happened was the story, written and drawn mostly by Frank Miller, went off to the Comics Code Authority for approval, and approval was refused because the issue deals with drug pushing and also gun violence, and the Comics Code Authority thought that it violated aspects of their code and refused to grant the code approval to the issue. So the issue was set aside, and ultimately Frank Miller would pull it out again from the files, and it was published as Child's Play Part 1 in issue 183. And we'll get there eventually with these reviews, and Roger McKenzie gets a story credit there. And Frank Miller asked editorial Denny O'Neil and Hire to make the case that the issue ought to be published and receive Comics Code Authority approval, and that is what happened ultimately. But because of that issue being set aside, a guest writer was needed to come up with a plot pretty quickly, and that was David Michelinie, who must have provided a Marvel style plot to Frank Miller. Miller's only credited as penciler, but I can imagine him getting the basic plot from Michelinie, and then drawing it out himself. And Klaus Janson, inker, Joe Rosen, letterer, and Glynis Wine, colorist. So the setting here is a cocktail party at a fancy country club, and we zero in on Matt Murdock here and his girlfriend Heather Glenn, and this guy here, Cord, who is the organizer of the cocktail party and wants to have a word with Matt, get him on staff for his big company. But in the meantime, we are seeing these panels from the point of view of someone wearing, as it turns out, a battle suit. And so we see the hands here parting the foliage. We're moving in closer and closer. We've got the laser targeting system here, targeting Cord. And we have these captions here. From the computer, perimeter security neutralized. Begin visual scan for enemy. Enemy observed and identified. Initiate targeting sequence. Blaze cannon locked on. And prime destruction of Edwin Cord imminent. So is that what is going to happen? Well, let's turn the page. And we get this double page half splash here of this new character, the Mauler, in his battle suit and striking with his blaze cannon at Cord, who's only in his swimming trunks after all. But before that, up here, we have Cord making an offer to Matt Murdock to come on staff as a lawyer, and he makes the inappropriate suggestion that you could name your own salary and there'd be plenty of other benefits. Ones the friendly folks at the IRS wouldn't have to know about, if you catch my drift, as he winks at Murdoch. Murdoch can't see that wink, but maybe you can hear it. What do you say? Matt isn't at all impressed. He goes straight to Heather and tells her, we're leaving. Heather, please don't make a scene. So Heather's miffed that they could be leaving so soon, and then this happens. So great artwork by Frank Miller on these pages, inked by Klaus Janson, of course. And then we continue with this figure in his battle suit, charging up his hand and about to kill Cord, when these security guys, these big beefy muscly guys, run to protect their boss. Meanwhile, Matt makes his way to a cabin to change into Daredevil, and he finds in there this girl who's changing into her swimwear, and he says, sorry, this is an emergency. And she says, but wait a minute, I'm not dressed. He says, that's all right, miss, I promise not to look. Haha, Matt is blind. And the Mauler here is fighting off these guys in their swimming trunks. He's doing much better than them, as you might expect. And then Fatak, he's caught with Daredevil's baton. And this is something that Frank Miller does really well throughout this issue. The storytelling with Daredevil bouncing around, the DeLuca effect, but also his use of his billy club, right? And we'll see a little bit more about that in the backup strip too. But I love the way, like, he hits it off the back of Mauler's helmet. It bounces on the ground, poink, and he catches it in his right hand. Just really fluent conceptualization of what is going on in these panels and the action by Daredevil. So here we see it again with the DeLuca effect in this panel, where there is a coherence and flow to Daredevil landing on his hands there, leaping forward, turning around, and then leaping towards Mauler and kicking him with his left leg. So the left leg is pulled back there and then forward for the kick into Mauler's jaw. So as I said, like the flow of the action sequence is logically worked out by Miller. Everything makes sense here, like it would if he was drawing animation cells. So then after kicking him in the jaw, he leaps back to the ground onto his hands again and somersaults backwards, or launches himself via his arms back to kick Mauler in the gut, or in the torso, tomb there. So just really coherent working out of the action sequence by young Frank Miller, only 23 at this stage in his career. But then Mauler grabs him, electrocutes him, and then the police turn up with Lieutenant Nick Manolis, who is a feature throughout Miller's run and also shows up in Born Again memorably as well. So the Mauler makes his escape, and some of the things he says there indicate, let me see if we can get a little bit of dialogue from him here, just so that you can see the clues that are being given. The only one he wanted to hurt was Cord. Oh yeah, he says to Cord here, you prefer those qualities over diligence, that is brawn and blind obedience, over dedication, over loyalty. Like, this is clearly at this point you can infer that it's a disgruntled former employee. I like the effect here of Mauler flying off and then the wake of the thrusters in his boots, just the way that Miller has drawn it here, the geometrical delineation of those thrusters, pretty cool. And then humorously, Daredevil has disappeared, so then we have Matt returning, just doing up his shirt, Heather giving him the okay sign here. Nice work, Handsomoni. I think your more cerebral skills are going to be needed for the next problem. Cord is refusing to talk. So Matt then says openly, Cord, you're obviously involved in this near massacre up to your teeth. I don't know what he means by near massacre, because Mauler made the point that the only one he was after was Cord, and nobody else was badly injured, in fact. But anyway, Cord says to Lieutenant Manolis, would you please look at this card and then inform our public-spirited friend of the reality of the situation? So Manolis says here, terrific. I'm afraid he's right, Murdoch. I've only seen a security clearance that high twice in my whole career. What it means basically is that Cord doesn't have to talk to anyone about anything. But of course, for Matt Murdoch, it doesn't mean it's over. So he says, by the way, Mr. Cord, you'd best have your waiters check the hors d'oeuvre. I think they've been in the sun too long because something smells very rotten around here. So then it's that evening, and Cord is returning to his Long Island estate. It's heavily guarded. He's got like this private security team. They pretty much look like military men. He goes into his private office and there's somebody there waiting for him. Hello, Cord, I believe you've something to tell me. Who could it be? It's DD, yes. And this classic Miller layout of the full page horizontal panel, really to great effect here as DD's sitting back in the chair, eating an apple. And again, look, the way he uses the billy club here to smash the button, the security button that Cord was about to press. So he smashes it out of his hand. And just keep an eye on the billy club as it bounces off the wall onto the floor, hits that mirror, off the floor again, and DD catches it in his left hand. So once again, this is another illustration of the degree to which Miller thinks out the logic and coherence and flow of the action panel to panel in his storytelling. So basically, Cord says, the guy in the armor is Aaron Soames. He was dismissed from my company for clerical reasons. He didn't like it, so he snuck back and stole the prototype for some advanced body armor we're developing. And we get the reason it's called Mauler, the Mobile Armored Utility Emitter Revised, better known as Mauler. Obviously, Soames is trying to get revenge on the company. So Daredevil says, I don't think you're telling me everything, Cord, but at least you've given me something to think about. Now I'll give you something to think about. If I find you've lied to me, I'll be back, as he knocks off the light switch. Click. Very effective storytelling on this page. We open this page with an all-black panel. Cord finds the light switch. Daredevil's gone, of course. The eaten apple on the floor. And also look at the degree to which Miller's concerned with continuity. We've got the crack on the mirror on the wall there from earlier, and little bits of debris also on the floor from earlier. So then he's back in his, the next morning, Matt is in the storefront law offices of Murdoch and Nelson. He's talking with the secretary, Becky, and she's worried about him, what's wrong. And he says, I'm not entirely sure what is wrong, but I'll tell you one thing, I'm going to find out. Love the use of screen tone here for the shadow on Matt's face. That's nicely done by Klaus Janson. And then it's night once again. And Daredevil's gone to the sprawling Long Island City headquarters of the Cord conglomerate. So that's it, designed here by Miller. Daredevil sneaking up at night on this tree branch, and he's thinking that if he knows that Cord is there that night, then Mauler will know it too, and he's expecting Mauler to show up for round 2 of taking on Cord. Nice little panel here of Daredevil on his hunkers on the tree branch, and then the shadows of the leaves and foliage on his shoulder and head. Very nicely done. Then he catches a smell of carbonizing steel. Someone's melting metal, breaking in. So unbeknownst to the guards, he uses a hidden stud in his billy club to send a high tensile grappling wire unreeling, allowing him to arc through the night like a silent soaring shadow. So he runs across electrical wiring, sees the melted security door, makes his way in just to find Mauler about to kill Cord again. So what are we going to get? We're going to get Daredevil versus Mauler. And once again, that billy club in action there. So he sends the billy club, hits the ground, ricochets off this piece of machinery and catches Mauler in the shoulder, which throws off his aim. And then classic Frank Miller, these full page horizontal panels with the action sequence here of Daredevil fighting Mauler and vice versa. Really, really well done. And once again, the action is all coherent and logical. So Mauler begins to get the better of Daredevil here and lets his the screen of his mask down to show who's inside the suit. So it's an older man. He is 63 years old, he says, 35 of them spent as a file clerk for Edwin Cord until he brought in a computer to do my job quicker and cheaper. That sounds familiar, even in 2023, yes, except now it's AI. But the big surprise came when I tried to collect my pension. Seems the young hotshot who programmed the new computer with the wrong key, hit the wrong key, and wiped out my entire 35-year work record. I went to Mr. Cord about it, and you know what he did? He smiled and he said, "Sorry, Soames, no record, no pension." And he smiled. That seems completely unbelievable, yes? But for the sake of the story, we have to allow it, but it seems absolutely ridiculous. Like the guy never had any pay stubs or slips or any tax returns or anything like that to prove that he was with the company. Seems bizarre. So anyway, he says, I applied for Social Security, but the interviewer dozed off while I was trying to explain. So I spent the last of my savings on a fancy lawyer, and sure enough, he got me a court date a year from next Thursday. That was when I stole this armor, figuring that it would give me the strength I needed to make Cord pay. How do you get from this to that? Except, of course, it's a superhero comic, and we need that kind of decision made in order to have a story like this. Anyway, Cord is there and mocking Soames, saying the only thing you're going to be making, old man, is license plates. So Daredevil, it's not Soames, or it's not Cord, but rather his security team, right? They finally arrived at the disturbance, and so Daredevil uses, no, actually it's Mauler here. Soames uses his laser cannon to blast out the lights, which actually gives Daredevil, of course, an advantage. And so he uses it to good effect. Interesting storytelling here. All the figures in silhouette, and then Glynis Wine's choice of a deep blue to indicate the darkness. I like it. I think it works well. So Daredevil makes his way to the door while the security team start attacking each other. They're so confused by the darkness. And Mauler once again has got hold of Cord. This is another Frank Miller layout staple, these long, thin, vertical panels on the page. So we've got 7 of them in a row here as we go back and forth between Mauler and Daredevil, and Mauler and Cord and Daredevil, and so on and so forth. So what Mauler does is he grabs Cord's wallet and burns all his credit cards, all his bank cards, everything, and says that the petty plastic numbers that make your existence official, the numbers that you and your computer denied to me, I'm taking them out and I'm killing them. So welcome to my world, Mr. Cord, my world. You don't exist either. That's not possible, right? That's a stretch. I'm sure that Cord also has bank statements and paper records connected with his bank cards and credit cards, and he'll be able to get those replaced in a few days' time. But anyway, Soames here says he's got no further use for him, and then the security guys roll up with this cannon, which Daredevil tries to interfere with using his billy club once again, but he's too late. Mauler's caught right in the chest by the blast from the cannon, and it kills him, in fact. He says, thanks anyway, Daredevil, for trying to save him, but I guess it doesn't really matter now. Maybe it never did. So he dies in despair. And Daredevil comes up to Cord, and Cord gives an explanation that the armor was being developed for the government. To expose it to the public would be a breach of national security, so Daredevil can't do anything about that. It's the law, you understand that, don't you? Cord says to Daredevil as he straightens his tie and gets, I think he's lighting up a cigar there. He says, yes, Mr. Cord, I understand the law and the need for national security, and I respect them both. But he punches him out. So that's how he feels about things. And then it is Soames's funeral. There's very few there in attendance. Matt's there in his Daredevil costume, lays some flowers at the gravestone, which has been donated by attorney Matthew Murdoch. And this is Soames's epitaph. He was, and that is enough. Oof, I don't know. That is a little bit... I don't know. It's too pat and a little bit twee or corny a conclusion. The story would have had to have been come up with, or rather, better, I'll rephrase that. Michelinie would have had to have come up with this story probably in a very short amount of time. So I think maybe we should take that into account in terms of this, as it done in 117 pages. It's not what was intended. And as I said to you before, the Punisher story with Daredevil did get finally published up ahead in issue 183. And I'll talk again about the whole business when I get to review that particular issue. But here we go. This is really significant. So we've had 17 pages of story, just like in the previous couple of issues. But now we've got a bonus, this collector's item backup, Dark Secrets. So there's no writing credit here, but this is written and drawn by Frank Miller. So this is Frank Miller's first writer-artist work on Daredevil. And this is in advance of the upcoming issue 169. So this is an interesting little 5-page story where we get a kind of a primer or a basic nuts and bolts of who Matt Murdock Daredevil is, and also a really cool account of how his billy club works as well. So the siren's going here, Matt Murdock's listening, changes into his Daredevil costume. I love the idea here of his shadow, the shadow being cast and it being Daredevil, an interesting artistic idea. And then we get this insight into the plan. Well, it's kind of like a cutaway, rather, better to say a cutaway elevation of Daredevil's East Side brownstone. And the narrative captions here say, it's a veritable castle remodeled to accommodate his needs as a lawyer and as the man without fear. Is a personal art gallery containing countless sculptures and bas-reliefs, things of beauty to be touched but never seen. So those are up there on the top floor. Then the most extensive Braille library in the world, and a hidden soundproofed gymnasium for countless hours of training toward physical perfection, and that's down here. So cool to see that. And then he's got this special skylight. To protect his secret identity, Daredevil leaves his brownstone through a disguised skylight exit, which he activates by stepping on an unmarked floorboard here. And then the business about the billy club, which is really interesting. In his day-to-day life, DD's famous billy club is disguised as a blind man's cane, but whenever it's needed, the cane can be swiftly snapped into two sections, each having a specific function in relation to his duties. The first section contains a spring release mechanism which instantly straightens the curved cane handle at the touch of a single stud, and that's happening here. A second tap of the stud extends a length of the 30-foot cable within the device to form a retractable roof-catching hook. We see that there. The hook and cable device enables DD to swing across distances too great to leap, increasing his speed and mobility through the city. The straightened cane handle can revert to its curved shape when Daredevil needs to hold on to a ledge or carry extra weight. So he saves this person from being run over by these fleeing robbers in the car with the police on their tail. The remaining section of the Billy Club cane is simpler in design. And this is interesting. It is a superbly balanced piece of steel reinforced wood, which Daredevil uses both as a truncheon and as a projectile that he throws with consummate skill. And I was talking about that in the first story in this issue. So that's how it can go right through the windscreens of this car. And so the robbers here, the masked robbers flee, and Daredevil attacks them, and a couple of others seem to escape down an alley here, and he is sensing them. He can't see them, and the caption here says he can actually hear a man's heartbeat at a distance of 100 feet. When these hypersenses are focused on a fleeting enemy, no matter how fast or far his prey may run, Daredevil cannot be eluded. So they're jumping a wall or a fence here, but he is still on their tail. So he's going down this alley, and the caption says, "While we have eyes that are tricked by shadows and see nothing without light, Daredevil has an uncanny radar sense. Like a bat, he emits probing high-frequency waves which break against any solid object, and breaking send back signals audible only to Daredevil. From these signals, his brain instantly forms silhouette images of everything around him. In this manner, he sees, quote-unquote, in every direction. But none of his amazing hypersenses would be enough without his clarity of thought, his faultless, nearly superhuman speed and coordination. Daredevil would be dead 100 times over without that. This is DD's greatest secret, his passion to strengthen his mind and body, to relentlessly hone his skills and abilities, his passion to be the very best." As he leaps away from the disabled robbers, and we've got the police here to arrest them. So this is a really cool 5-page story by Miller, where you've got this little basic story of Matt hearing the police sirens going after this car with the robbers in. They're shooting at the police, and then getting into his Daredevil costume, leaving the brownstone, using his billy club, saving this boy from being run over by the fleeing robbers. The billy club again, taking out 2 of them, chasing the other 2, using his hypersenses and his radar sense, taking out the last 2 guys, and then leaping away with the cops arriving. And all the while you're getting this very developed, very detailed explanation of all of these fascinating features of the Daredevil mythos, and insight into his house with the world's finest Braille library, the art, the gymnasium, the way his billy club works, everything. Very, very cool. This 5-page backup strip written and drawn by Frank Miller impressed Denny O'Neil so much that when Miller came to him complaining about Roger Mackenzie's scripts and working with Mackenzie, Denny O'Neil decided to fire Mackenzie and give the book to Miller himself to take over as writer-artist, which he did, of course, famously with issue 169 in the introduction of Elektra. So there you go. This is the 5-page backup that convinced Denny O'Neil that Frank Miller could do it all, write and draw the book. So I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary on Daredevil 167. If you did, please like the video on YouTube, and if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.